You are listening to This is Oklahoma, hosted by Mike Hearn, telling stories of Oklahomans and those that have made it their home.
Before we get into today's episode, I want to tell you a little bit about our current sponsors, the Oklahoma Hall of Fame. As you well know, if you've been following This is Oklahoma, they've been a huge part of this podcast. So this podcast is presented by the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, telling an Oklahoma story through its people since 1927. For more information on the Hall of Fame, go to www.oklahomahof.com and follow them on Instagram for daily updates at OklahomaHOF. Also, for the podcast, a new sponsor this year that's just come on board and super excited to announce RCB Bank. Since 1936, RCB Bank has offered progressive products and a friendly service. Come in today to find out more about their loan promotion on new, used, refinance cars, boats, campers, and ATVs. Visit RCB Bank to learn more. RCB Bank, that's my bank. With approved credit, restrictions apply. Now, let's get into today's episode.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of This is Oklahoma. Mike Hearn here, your host, back with another episode down at the Bedford studio today with my guest, John James, to talk about his store called Native Summit, which, you know, Native Summit, people listening probably thinking, well, it's outdoor stuff, and you'd be right. John, thanks for coming down to the studio. Excited to dive into your story and talk about, you know, being outdoors and the beauty of travel and adventure.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for having me.
So I guess when people say to you, what do you do? What do you tell them?
That I guess simply they may ask what the store is, and I would tell them it's a cooler, more invitive REI.
Okay. Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of people know what REI is, so it's like it's a similar thing, except we've got the people working there. I would say we have passion and real world experience, and we really hang our hat on that educational aspect of of being all inclusive. Come in, whatever your range or experience is, a lot or none. Yeah, we can do this. Let's go.
Yeah. So growing up, do you always kind of have the passion of being outdoors?
Yeah, I mean, if I think back through growing up, I think about two things come to mind to me, and that's being outside and either hunting or fishing and camping and those things, which we did a lot of that, and then sports. Those are the two things I think about, and I don't remember anything about being inside. It's all those things. So, and so growing up, we didn't do a lot of hiking or backpacking or any of that stuff. It was hunting and fishing mainly. Yeah. But as I got older into high school and certainly into college, I still loved doing those things, but I was trying to find other excuses for being outside. So then that morphed into the hiking, the backpacking, the camping, climbing, all those things. Yeah, got added to the mix.
Yeah. So brothers and sisters growing up?
Yeah, two older sisters.
So you were the baby?
Yeah.
And you got taken care of?
Got to tell me what to do, yes.
I'm an older. Normally, I have a younger brother, and he gets taken care of.
Normally it was them trying to get me to be on their side.
Yeah, of course.
They fought, and so I was the third kind of tiebreaker.
Brilliant.
Sorry, you're going to say you had...
I'm an older brother, so I have a younger brother, and he kind of did anything he wanted.
Gotcha.
Which, not bitter about it at all. He still does anything he wants. He still lives at home and lives on mum and dad. Lewis, if you're listening, you know exactly what you do. So growing up then, always kind of being outside, and I mean, there's some kids now or some parents now, you think, you know, or just growing up in general, it's totally different now, isn't it, compared to how, you know, grew up, and even how I grew up, right? Like, you know, I grew up kind of, I remember the sound of the internet, which people might not even remember that. People do. You know, but even before that, like running outside, just come home when it's dark, you know.
No, it was easier, right? Then I think there was nothing they had to, they were trying to get us back inside, not get us outside. I mean, we didn't have internet at that point. You know, we had maybe 5 or 6 channels on a TV, and there was no remote, right? So my dad would holler from the other room, "Hey, come in here." And he'd come in there, and he'd want you to change the channel, right? Turn the knob. But it was all outside. I didn't want to be inside. My mom would put me to work. So, there was nothing to look at. I think we got, when I was younger, it was maybe an hour of TV a week. It was the allotted amount, and so I burned it on Friday nights on the Dukes of Hazzard and chips.
Yeah.
And that was it. That's what I was allotted.
It's amazing if you tell your kids now, or parents try and tell their kids, hey, you get an hour of TV a week or an hour of social media a week. I mean,
Or a screen period.
The screen period.
Yeah.
You might they might think that you're horrendous parents and you should be put in jail.
What is wrong with the internet? I can't. My video won't play.
It's not working. Things not downloading fast enough.
Right.
It's first world problems, isn't it?
Yeah, but for us, it was we'd get in trouble for not being inside. Like, we had to take piano lessons, and I hated it because it brought me inside. You have to come practice.
So can you still play?
No.
No. That was kind of, hey, you need to do this.
As soon as I was allowed to quit, I was out. Yeah.
Did you have any other kind of interest in music, or was that it?
I mean, I like it.
Yeah.
I wish that I would maybe at that point, parlayed it into guitar or something I was more interested in. But
something that might be cooler or
piano,
seen
I
as
didn't
cooler.
like because I was forced to do it.
Got you. That makes sense.
And that's probably speaks to my hard-headedness or something. But
so being outside and remembering that growing up, so did you grow up in the country or in a neighborhood?
it was on the edge of town. I mean, but the town's 10,000 people, so it's a small town, and a mile away was country. And then 25 miles away was my grandparents were cattle ranchers and had a 4,000-acre ranch.
Damn.
25 miles away. So for me, weekends and even weeknights in the summer, we would go up there and fish or hunt or help on the ranch. But, you know, you could get out in the middle of that thing and feel like, and you were completely alone and not a sound of human sound or anything. And I think I was spoiled in that regard just because most people don't have that.
Oh, it's totally peaceful, isn't it?
It was fantastic.
Yeah.
You could go do what you wanted and we came up with all sorts of
things. When
things
you're a kid, too, that's so much land when you're a kid, isn't it? I mean, it's a lot of land now when you're an adult, but when you're a kid, like, the world is so much bigger than you think, isn't it?
And you'd walk out from the ranch house and with the fishing pole over your shoulder, and it was very much like, I don't know if you remember the Andy Griffith Show, if you ever saw that, but it was a black and white show, and with what's the director's name? Ron Howard.
I know
the little
Ron
boy.
Howard. Yeah,
he was the boy in the show.
Yeah.
And part of that is him walking to this pond, you know, with the fishing, and that's what it was like out there. I mean, it was just wide open. But that's where a lot of how I got so much into the outdoors and hunting and fishing was we had it there.
Yeah.
And we didn't have to fight for a place to go, which I think for a lot of people now that's a challenge is where can I go do these things?
Yeah, and where can I do it safely, or where can I do it like without any permits or whatever it is, right? And it's and also I think now there's so much other stuff that they can do, right? Not like back in the day, it's like, oh, we'll just go and fish, or we'll go hunt. Like there's very little. We'll go play sports. Like those are the few things you can count on one hand what you can do. Right. Whereas now it's like, oh, I can go play video games. I can go here. I can go do this. You know, whatever it is. But so growing up outside, had a great time, learned a lot. Probably had a lot of kind of parental experience and just hanging out with family and going hunting and fishing and all like just special moments, right? That you probably didn't even realize at the time. You think, oh, I'm just going hunting with Dad, but
it just seemed normal.
Yeah,
right. And you know, as a kid, my dad worked really hard, and I remember that the work ethic, him not sitting around. So it would be like work and then, finish, grab the fishing poles, jump in the truck, and let's go. Yeah. And so that was his way to unwind, and it wasn't sitting on the couch and watching TV. It was, but it was a different time then, and I think, but there's a lot I appreciate about that too. So.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm sure, like, being a dad now, right, and like having that experiences, and you just like, going back to, I mean, all the kids were, oh, Dad's harping on about back in my day, right? But like, they will appreciate it in the future, right? So, what was kind of high school like, and then after high school, like, what are you going into? Like, what are your interests, and then kind of into the professional world, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was still those things in high school. I mean, it was, sports and all the outdoor stuff. I mean, and schoolwork was whatever, and I did okay. I was I think blessed to be smart enough to get through high school without putting any effort in, which reared its head in college at some point, right? Because I didn't know how to prepare or study because I never had to.
Yeah.
High school was too easy. But yeah, and then, you know, I went to college with the idea of like, you know, having to, being a doctor sounded good, right? So that's what I said the whole time. And I went through college with majoring in biology and physics, all trying to get into med school, and didn't realize until my senior year, talking to you know, some doctors at the time, and they seemed miserable.
Yeah.
Like, they weren't happy. They were
a lot of pressure.
working so much.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what's the point if you're not enjoying your life? And so transitioned from that into only slightly different into ecology. And so went on got a master's in ecology and did 4 years of a PhD in ecology. And that kept me outside.
Right.
At least in theory, if at least half outside and half in a lab.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed the science. I enjoyed the detail, the conducting science aspect of that. On things you were passionate about already.
That's I mean, there's so much to go into with that, isn't it? Like with the research side of things, and I mean, just figuring out how things work, why they work, how things are the way they are. Like that's
right.
You know, what better to be in that passion when you already love being outside?
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
Where'd you go to school?
The only downside was I figured out towards the end of the PhD work that I was over-educating myself from being outside.
Yeah.
Right. I was going to be like, my options were to be behind a desk writing grants. I'm like, oh, this doesn't sound
I
great.
don't want to do this. I want to be doing.
I enjoy the process of doing the science, but most of these guys with, you know, once they're finished, aren't necessarily doing the science anymore.
Gotcha.
It's the
They're
grad
getting a desk
students that are
job.
doing the science.
Yeah.
In a lot of cases. So anyway, that was. I forgot what you asked.
Oh, school. Do you go to school in Oklahoma?
Yeah, so the graduate work was at Oklahoma State.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good time up there too.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, as a grad student, I mean,
were you working
sort of
at
a
the
good
time as
time.
well then, as a grad
No,
student?
this was full time.
Okay.
Like it's in that world, it's full time work. So I was putting in 50, 60 hours a week. You get a stipend of I forget, for masters it was like $880 a month.
Yeah.
But you didn't have time for a job.
Right. Yeah.
And so you're scraping just to pay rent and buy a few groceries. And then the PhD side of things, I want to say, was right at $1,000 a month, which wasn't any easier really. So yeah, it was tough, and you just kind of figure it out. I guess.
Yeah. Well, and I guess at that point, like that's what you want to do. You know, that's the only thing you're worrying about, right? You're not worrying about too many other things.
It's just that. That's your
it's
life.
just like, you're right. This is my life. I'm going to get this PhD. I'm going to graduate and go on to, bigger, better things.
The cool thing about, I guess, the research aspect was for the PhD work was over in the Ouachita National Forest of Arkansas. We were able to use a cabin that was owned by the Arkansas Fish and Game. Yeah. And so we would be there, had a couple of folks that worked in the field for the project. Yeah. But I would spend 3 or 4 months at a time over there. So that got you kind of out of that, lab stuff, which was always appreciated. But the master stuff was all Oklahoma-based, and I had 64 research, something like that. It's 60-some research sites in Oklahoma. Yeah. And I would have to travel between them and would average during the fieldwork season 25 or so 100 miles a week.
Wow. Yeah.
So you got to see the whole state.
Oh, you see everything.
In just loops.
Yeah.
And I wasn't that exposed to all the different areas of Oklahoma at that point, but I quickly became. And there's some cool corners of this.
Well, and that's one thing that you go to the Travel OK website, or you go to somewhere about traveling to Oklahoma, and it talks about how many ecosystems Oklahoma has, right? No one really knows that. And then you're like, we have like mountains, and we have like hills in Tulsa and up that way, and there's sand here as well. And then you get down to Broken Bow, and that area is great fishing, and like it's. Yeah. people, like, we just don't know, right? And I think COVID has probably helped people. Like, they're not jumping on a plane to go on vacation anymore, but they're like, hey, where can we drive to now? And I mean, if you try and find a cabin in Broken Bow at the moment, you're probably booking into next year, aren't you, if that?
Yeah, and if people haven't gone to southeastern Oklahoma, far southeast, and seen the pine, forest and the mountains and those things, I mean, it's hard to believe, I think, for most folks when they go down the first time that this is part of the state. Because it's unique and really a cool spot that is part of our state. Yeah.
Before we were recording, you mentioned you played competitive tennis in college. Was that for OSU?
No, that was in Weatherford.
So you played with Southwestern. Yeah. Okay, cool. So you went to Southwestern and played. I'd being a college athlete myself, like it's just a lot of fun, isn't it? You get to hang out, you get to play sport and travel a little bit. And
it was fun to the point it became like a job. Like you felt like you had to practice every day, right?
Yeah, every day.
And at some point in that process, if I didn't, then I felt like I was losing ground.
Yeah.
And I just, by the time I was a senior, I was so burnt out.
Kind of done with
sport.
it. Yeah.
I didn't play for 7 years after I graduated.
Yeah.
And it was on a trip somewhere that can't even remember now what, but everybody had gone to go do some touristy shopping in a town, and we were staying at this resort, and I was walking around just killing time, and there was a pro out at the courts just sitting there, and he's like, hey, you want to hit? I'm like, sure. It's been 7 years, I was thinking to myself, but started playing again. It's like, hey, this is fun.
Yeah.
When you're not driven by this,
Right. Results, and I've got to do this, and I've got to make my team, and it's, the scholarships involved and all that stuff. Like, did you find it, when you get back into it, right? Because I'm kind of going through this now. Like, I've always played golf, but I've never really played, like, after college, I've competed a little bit, but obviously not as much as we did in college. And I struggle with it because I'm like, it's come across my mind a couple of times, and I'm like, just pack it in and not worry about it and never have to worry about it ever again. Or like, do I get practicing again and try and get back to that level? And in golf is obviously a little different because tennis, you grow older, right? And your body can't do what you did in college. In golf, you can still kind of get away with it. Do you struggle with that? Getting back into competitive tennis at all?
Yeah. I think it's the perfectionist nature, but I can't play leisurely. Mm-hmm. It's all or nothing.
Yeah.
So when I got back into it, whenever that was, 7 years after I'd graduated, I thought, I'll find a place that's got some people and start playing a little bit again, just for another alternative form of a workout.
Yeah.
And fast forward a year, and I'm playing on a USTA team, and it's super competitive, and we're going to regionals and different things, and I did that for 5 or 6 years, and it got to be the same thing. You're climbing up the ladder there, and then we started having kids, and it's like, I can't turn it off.
Something has to give.
It's either off or on. I can't have it in the middle.
Yeah.
And it would be nice, but
I struggle with that all the time.
That's a sport where it's I can go out and shoot baskets.
Yeah.
Or those sorts of things. But man, that's one sport. Maybe it's just the one-on-one thing that.
Because it's only you, isn't it? Like you playing football, basketball, you're like, I got a team, I can kind of have fun and not really worry about it. But when it's an individual sport, and I have the same, like when I go to a golf tournament, even if it's just a scramble, like a charity scramble, I mean, if I don't, like, I get irritated when I don't play to the level that I know I can, right? And even though I did, right? Or I haven't practiced, I haven't prepared, and we're like, don't have to worry about that. We can still do what we used to be able to do, and we just can't, and it can be really frustrating.
Yeah, the mindset. It's amazing how quickly it goes back to that point.
Oh, straight away.
Driven, and I'm, this is what I'm going to do. I can do this, and then I haven't done that in 10 years.
Years and years of seeing shots and being able to do this, and like I said, you still see the shot, but trying to replicate it.
And the funny deal to me is that was never my favorite sport.
Okay.
I was just happened to be better at that one. But I loved the team sports, football, basketball. And I kind of, as a kid, lived and breathed for football. But the one thing I could always appreciate about tennis is this one-on-one thing. It was so much more mental than the other ones.
Yeah.
You could go out in a football or basketball or soccer and do your job. and you got help, and you're helping people, and they're helping you. But out there, you got no help.
There's no help.
It's one-on-one.
Yeah,
and that's amazing. Is the mental resolve of a bad shot or a string of bad plays, and somehow trying to overcome that and push forward. And that's always an impressive thing to me. Even now, watching these guys, or even, whether it's boxing, even it's same. I mean, that one-on-one challenges.
Yeah, the conversations you have with yourself, isn't it?
Right.
Like no one. I mean, if anybody would hear those conversations, like they'd probably think that we're all crazy, right?
Yeah.
Anyone who plays a one-on-one sport, but it's such a, like I said, such a mental thing. You grow from it, from being competitive, from going through those, those nervous situations, right? Like for tennis, you've got 1 or 2 points left, and you're like, I got to close this out, and you hit the net first serve, and I got to, hand gets a little shaky.
The only thing really that comes close is like, 2 free shots at the end of a basketball game, or a field goal with 2 seconds left.
Yeah.
But everything else is team.
Yeah.
I'm going to do my job and hope everybody does too.
Yeah. So that competitiveness in you, then loving sports and playing at a college level, taking that into your kind of business and PhD side, it's really hard to switch competition off. Right, like the people who are just naturally competitive.
Right.
When you got your PhD and you think I'm going to get a job, where does that take you then? And like how do you go from studying to hang on, I have this piece of paper now that I can apply for jobs? Where do you go from there?
Yeah, I think for one, I was 4 years into a 4.5-year PhD project. So. The last 6 months kind of got taken away. That's a whole different story for a different time. There's still some bitterness there, but I was basically starting over at that point.
Okay.
It's. And how do you do that at that point? I mean, I was basically 30 years old and was finished with school. 30.
Yeah.
And I had nothing. I mean, like
8 years of
prospects,
school, right?
Right?
Yeah.
And so it was interesting, I guess. And I would say that next 7 years of life was not the best.
Soul searching.
I did get married in that 7 years of time, so there's that. But it was there's got to be something else. And so I'd say probably 5 years into that 7, it was really trying to figure out, and it started as figuring out for a buddy of mine, like, hey, you need to open an outdoor store somewhere around here. And I think Edmond would be the spot.
Yeah.
And he had no interest, and I did some market research for him or whatever you're going to call what that was. And so I just continued at some point. I just want to see if it's viable, and took it far enough down the road. It's like, well, now the only really thing left to do to complete this project is to find actual space.
Find the space, yeah.
And so I found space, and I still wasn't convinced that I was going to do it. But it was mainly, if I remember right, my wife was like, let's just do it.
Yeah.
Like, why not? Like, it can work. And
you've done all the data. It should work on paper.
Right.
Yeah.
So there you go. It's not like I set out that this is what we're going to do.
Right.
I was
entertaining an idea from a friend. And then you're like, oh, I'll do some research for you.
And so that's kind of what happened. And it was refreshing to be back into something that I could pour passion into, and love of something into. Now it's been almost 13 years, and it seems like it's gone by in a snap, and I still enjoy. And that's really, I think, all I've ever wanted to have is to wake up in the morning and kind of look forward to getting into work.
Yeah. And being outside is not a job then, right? It's gone like from all those years in college and studying, and then being outside and driving around the state, for not much allowance, right? Not much money, and then now you're like, oh, I can I'm in the business to be outside now. It's not.
Yeah, and I still feel like that science is in me.
Of course, yeah,
The
but
research
it helps you so much now.
We feel like that we, really work hard at researching the products that we have. We don't have to have what we have in the store. We have it there because we like it and we believe in it and we want to use it and all those things. And I approach each one of those kind of categories as a research project, and I get enjoyment out of that.
Yeah.
And not everybody would. I get it, but I like having something to research.
Yeah, no doubt.
So the store then, the store comes around with that idea that, you've done the research and someone comes to you and says, hey, I think this would work. So you do all this research and then your wife says, hang on, let's do it. Why not? What is your wife doing at that point? Because, that takes to open a business, right? You need that support, especially when you're in a relationship and you've got bills to pay and need a job. It's quite a risk to say, hey, I'm going to start this new business.
Right. Yeah. She's an optometrist, and I think it was. So that made it easier, obviously.
Sure, yeah. But still a huge risk.
And at the time, we had just had a child, so we had when the store opened. He was maybe 14 months old, so this was going on about the birth time, right? And if I remember right, just after he was born in June and about that fall, so he was a few months old. We kind of made the decision at that point, and so it was. It wasn't the easiest thing to make, but that's her mentality is just let's go for it.
Yeah.
And my mentality is, hang on, let's look at this for a second. This may not be a good idea, and fast forward now, and we still do the same thing.
Right.
She's
see
the
wife
pants,
the
and I'm like, hang on, I need to dig in a little more before we make a bad decision. And I think we both have histories of. Sometimes I was right by slowing down, and sometimes she was right by.
Hey, we should do this. Let's go into it.
So it was tough, and I feel like that still drives me though today. Is going through that whole process and opening the door on the first day, the main door, like click, the time at 10 o'clock on day one. Okay. I hope somebody comes in at some point. And I feel like that still drives me today is that feeling of there's no guarantee that people are going to walk in the door. And so we have to prove it. I feel like every day and every week, and that people are busy. They've got lots of things pulling at them. They don't have to come over here and walk in the door.
Right, yeah.
That's still a scary thought is what if people just stop coming?
Yeah. Is the store today in the same spot, same location?
Yeah, same location.
Yeah, that's really cool. In Edmond?
Yes.
So that first day then, you built up, you stocked the store, you found it, you stock everything that you need and everything that you trust and get all that in.
I don't know about that.
Well, enough, I guess, right? To take some pictures and show people that we have things. What is that kind of first day like, and what's that? Because I think people listening is a great lesson that's going to come from this. Is people listening think, oh, we can start a business and going to make $10,000 the first day, right? Or the first week. There's so many. You've been in business for like I said, 13 years now, right? It doesn't happen overnight.
No.
For very few, it happens overnight, and then it probably cools off. So, what was that like that first day, and then I guess that first kind of year as well?
All I remember about the first day, I think a few folks came in. I'm sure we did $100 or $200 of that didn't make a dent in what we'd spent in the previous 6 months.
Sympathy buying, right? Yeah.
I just remember being totally exhausted. I don't remember really. I was in a haze because I did the build out of the space and built the rack. We did everything. And all the racks and half of them, we stopped using in the first, 3 months. I'm like, oh man, because we didn't have experience. We didn't know really what we would need and just tried. But it was 7 days a week, late nights, just getting ready we got to get this open. We're just bleeding money until it's open. yeah, it's hard to even remember and break out, years at this point and what things were. And, we were fortunate, at least in this area, during the time we opened, the North Face was a hot item, a hot brand. And so we were able to capitalize a little bit on that. So that helped.
Yeah.
But I think the big thing to me is we opened on a shoestring budget. Like I did all the labor, all the work inside the space, and I could have easily gone and done a $500,000 build out and had custom fixtures made and all these things, and I might still be paying that stuff off. And so I think the big thing for me, and I figured out early, is cash is king. I mean, business can't operate without cash on hand. And so we got to have cash, and I can't do anything without it. We got to buy inventory. We buy inventory 9 months in advance, right? So all of my orders for fall 21 were placed in December and January.
Wow.
How do you do that?
Yeah, how do you plan for that stuff?
Right. And so you're trying to foretell the future, for one. That's hard enough. But if you don't have the cash to pay for it, man, it's rugged.
Yeah.
So I see folks opening up on these big grand scales, and if they got the backing for that, then okay, I don't know what their scenarios are, but for us, it was the cash. You can only pull out so much cash from different places, and at some point it's going to catch up with you.
Yeah. So that going through that time, then like building out the store and doing it all on your own, and kind of not spending as much as you could easily have spent on building that out and taking the time to do it. When you get the store open, and I guess you start establishing the brand and the name, and people start to recognize it, I guess how do you go about marketing the store then to people and brands, and I guess that adventure outdoor lifestyle that people need to buy the products from you to go do this stuff?
Sure. Well, I think it's certainly changed. It's like in those days, you did some print ads, right? Who does print ads now? I mean, do you see any print ads at this point? And then it was, maybe then, I don't remember, but soon after it was, social media. You could put a post on Facebook, and everybody that followed you saw the post as a business. Well, that doesn't happen anymore, right?
Yeah.
So it's certainly changed. I think from an in-store perspective, we've always been like we've just got to assume that word of mouth is something.
Right.
That we've got to take care of people well enough that they're going to tell people about us. That doesn't mean we don't try other things, but what's totally proven at this point? I mean, it's like try a little bit here and there, but really being true to what we are and doing that really well, and not getting involved in all the other stuff.
Yeah. So someone comes into the store then, and because of the pandemic, I'm sure we can talk about that in a little bit of just dealing with that as a business owner. But when someone comes into the store, and now because of the pandemic, they're not flying, well, they might not have been flying last year. They want to travel by car and just road trip in Oklahoma for the weekend. What are your top places that you tell them to go to then?
Well, I mean, we talked about Southeastern Oklahoma. I mean, that's great. If camping's on the list at all, and I encourage people to try it. I mean, you're not going to die.
Yeah.
I mean, just get out of the lightning, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Stay out of the line of a tornado.
Yeah.
But it's surprisingly easy to have a good time camping. You don't need a trailer full of stuff. So I think that the state park systems are good. I mean, there's some that are better than others, of course, that certainly everybody has different opinions on different ones. But yeah, I mean, you can totally make a weekend out of Southeast. I mean, you can take a longer than a weekend in Southeastern Oklahoma. Certainly you can make a weekend out of the Wichita Mountains. There's closer ones like Roman Nose. If you haven't been up there, that's a cool spot. So and tie multiple together, or however you want to do it. Set up a base camp and explore that way. We get a lot of people that will drive by these places, and that's okay to get up into the Southern Rockies, and certainly you can get up into Southern Colorado or Northern New Mexico in 8 hours.
Yeah.
So on a Thursday afternoon, you can be up there somewhere and spend Friday, Saturday, and drive home the second half of Sunday. So there's a lot of that happens. But yeah, I mean, there's still spots here. Northwest Arkansas is really cool as well.
Yeah.
For both hiking and biking and fishing, and so there's cool spots, and it's maybe you could argue they're few and far between, but there are some.
Yeah. So because of you having this store, then has it kind of forced you to get out more and go travel and go see places? And like we spoke earlier before recording about, taking product with you to go shoot and take photos of it. And like, I assume that would have been the greatest excuse ever to go somewhere, right?
Yeah. It's just an excuse.
Yeah.
To get out.
Like, hey, I want to go cross this place off the list.
Right.
Let me take some stuff with me.
I'd kind of tried to dabble or try to really get into what I would call legit mountaineering or alpine climbing before the store, but it was
like climbing up rock faces and like legit hard hat stuff, like proper stuff,
ropes
not just kind of
and crampons and ice axes and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I couldn't really get into it until after the shop opened. So the one thing I've really been able to get into is alpine climbing. And
that's some pretty hairy stuff.
And so, I think, and I don't know what it is. I mean, for me, I went from hiking to backpacking, and backpacking was so cool because you had everything you needed on your back, and you were self-sufficient, and you got to somewhere and be like, I'm going to camp here, and I've got it all here, and then you start doing that for extended days, and you keep seeing what's over the next ridge and what's over that sense of exploration that I think so many people have. What's over there and what's over there, and for me doing that, in the mountains, I got to want to see what's up there, like what's that ridge line like, what's that above tree line look like, I wonder, and so the backpacking trips turned into picking spots and trails that were above tree line, and that was like this whole new world for me, kind of like scuba diving, let's say, right? Yeah. You can go under, and it's like entering this new dimension. You can't stay there very long because you can't survive. There's nothing up there enough for you to survive, but you can visit for a while, and it's pretty fascinating.
And you're probably the only one there.
And the views and the ruggedness and all these things. And so that always drew me to where I wanted to be up above tree line and see what that was like. So the natural next thing for me was the alpine climbing side of things. And so, it was, I don't remember, maybe 2010 started taking trips to the Canadian Rockies, and that's where it really set in.
Yeah.
That's an amazing part of the world. And so I could justify it as, product testing.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's not a vacation. This is a business expense. Right. 100%. You ever see anything weird? Ever see, if you're out there on your own, at least, I watched, I recently started watching The Meat Eater on Netflix. It's a fantastic series, and he's up in crazy places, and then you dive into YouTube and find crazy stuff, and there's all these conspiracies or whatever, and Bigfoot and everything else. But there's a few accounts. What is it? And Cam Haines obviously is the big bow hunting guy or whatever. But I think I was probably listening to the Meat Eater episode on Joe Rogan's podcast with the guy, and he was talking about some other guy that had some weird experiences being in, supposedly you're alone in the middle of nowhere, and something happens, or it's not like he's seen a sighting or seen something, but you're the only one out there for the most part, right? Did anything happen like that? Anything just freak you out?
Knock on wood, no, that I can remember. I mean, certainly there's been some bear encounters and things, nothing close enough to really, if I were to walk in somewhere up there and round a corner of a wooded trail, and be face to face with the grizzly, that would be,
it's
it'd
not
be
good.
it'd be instant. But one of the guys up there that I know got treed by one.
Yeah.
He was a guide with 2 clients, got treed.
Jeez.
So they climbed this tree. Look, they had all the climbing gear, right?
Yeah.
And sat up there for like 3 hours until
until this thing
and it
left.
started climbing the tree too.
Yeah, that's
Anyway,
that's a
they
scary
made it
situation.
out, and luckily nothing like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, you never know. I mean, it's some wild parts, right?
Yeah, I mean, and I started going down the conspiracy rabbit hole, right, of saying that like, like all, not Bigfoot, but all of the random things that we don't, the country and the government doesn't want to know, is they're all in the state parks, and you're just like, what? And you see these interviews of these guys talking, they're like, yeah, we had legit encounters of things. And we're like, were you like, did you eat mushrooms? Even
Right,
sniffing
yeah.
something? Like, what's going on here? Because they never look like normal human beings, right? They got,
I mean, that's where like the scientist part comes out. And
Yeah.
I think we've done pretty well at cataloging
Right.
the living species on the planet for the most part. I don't
Yeah.
think a
it gets interesting.
large,
real fast.
hairy, massive animal has
Yeah.
escaped us at this point. But
Yeah.
I guess there's always a chance.
Are there any, I guess, like people like Cam Haines, Bear Grylls, all these kind of internet or TV stars that you really follow and like follow their stuff? Like the Meat Eater show is really cool, but anything else like that stands out?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I'll watch like the and I don't always get along with the whole over drama.
Oh, of course, yeah.
the reality stuff.
Right.
It's more
the
about
informational stuff
like
that you want
what
to know.
part of this is real and not
Right.
real. But
Yeah.
I mean, all the people living far north in the extreme cold, that's fascinating because that is cold.
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
below what? Below 40 or below
Negative
30 all
40
the time?
and all that for potentially months at a time.
Yeah.
And that's impressive.
We
that you
couldn't
could
do a week
stay
here, could
there.
we, when it happened?
I guess somebody may have, the other theory may be they're not really living there full time. I don't know.
Yeah,
but I'll still watch them.
That's fascinating stuff.
And see kind of what they're doing and how they're getting by. 'Cause
Yeah.
that's fascinating to me.
It's not an easy situation.
9 months of winter is interesting. Not sure that I would want to take part.
I don't want to experience
in
that.
level of. I like the cold.
Yeah.
but that's a different level of cold.
Right. Yeah. For a sustained period of 9 months, that's not fun. So I mentioned COVID earlier, and last year, not being able to open a store, but that wasn't fun. How was that to pivot and go through that experience?
I mean, what a crazy time,
That's
right?
nuts.
Because there's no playbook. Nobody's ever seen that before, and I just felt like we were figuring out as we go, and trying to do the right thing, and you don't even know what that is half the time. I knew that we wanted to keep people on staff, whatever that meant, and and take a hit if we needed to, but we had to have the people.
Yeah.
If we were to open again, and otherwise, what? So we put a lot of effort in on the online side of things, on e-com, which wasn't really developed at that point, which should have been, but it wasn't. And so we put a lot of effort into that, and whatever. 12 months later, I mean, we're still adding stuff. I mean, it's a long process.
Well, now people are used to switch. Yeah, people are used to like shopping online now, right? Like this kind of year is, okay, even if you do open up, it's still not great for places that have a retail spot because everyone's used to shopping on their phone now. They're used to it. They're accustomed to it. They're, if it doesn't work, I'll send it back.
Right.
Which before that, you're like, oh, do I have to send it back? That's kind of an issue. Well, now they don't even worry about it.
Right.
So,
and I think for us that's still where we really try to hang our hat on the experience and the education and if you need help, that's why you come in. You want to go do a 5-day backpacking trip.
Yeah.
What do I need? That's why we're here.
Gotcha.
Because how do you figure that out otherwise?
Right.
You find some guy and you pick his list and you don't know if he's ever done anything.
Right.
He says
buy a
it?
pack off the internet and it's just
doesn't
trash.
fit, right? And, so because of all those things, we hope that people continue to come in and utilize that because that's really what it is. It's not we're trying to sell somebody more. We want you to go out and have such a fantastic time and have such great gear, and it fits and it works well that you forget about the gear and you just have a good time and you want to go do it again.
That's the value that you create from the business, isn't it? Is like people coming in, creating personal relationships and giving you a one-on-one experience that, hey, this stuff's going to work.
And then they go out and it does work as advertised.
Right.
And then really the ultimate goal is to have such trust with people that all they come in and they tell us about this new trip.
Yeah.
What specific things would I need for that trip?
Yeah.
They're not asking, how much, or trying to get an idea if we're telling. They know we're shooting straight with them. Like, this is what I would take for this trip.
Yeah.
And that's a big deal. But back to the pandemic, the biggest thing we've seen, I think, since reopening is just, the travel aspect.
People want to get outside now, right?
They do want to do that. And it's a struggle to figure out, how, but the air travel is not there yet. So it's definitely car travel. And I think at some point the air travel slowly returns. Yeah. But until it does, it's a different different story.
Yeah. So obviously the store's in Edmond. I'll post, for people listening, I'll post the links to the social media. They can go to that and click, see the social media pages and the website. I guess what's one thing that people, when people ask you about the business and what you do and everything, what's the one thing that you just tell them if they've never traveled before and they want to come in and have a look? Do you guys do like educational stuff as well at the store? And, just like, say a mum of 3 is listening, or a dad that wants to go out with their sons.
Yeah,
and
sure.
Just kinda...
So pre-pandemic, we had classes.
Yeah.
We'll get back to that. Different entry-level classes. We're trying to get that onto the website at this point, kind of that class aspect there, so that you can read it on your couch or watch it on your couch or whatever. But the goal is we want to lower the bar for folks to get out. What do you want to do? You want to day hike? You want to camp? You want to backpack? You want to do something, you climb or something more extreme? Whatever it is. And even if it's not a class, come in. We'll talk to you about it. Ask us questions. Like, you don't have to buy something. Yeah. We want folks to feel our passion for all of these things, whether it's, I try to tell employees this, we want to have the same passion for the elderly person that wants to walk their dog in the winter and wants to be warm, as we do for the guy that wants to go do Denali. Same deal. Yeah. We're happy they're just getting outside. And we want them to have a good experience outside. So until the classes are back, we'll all chat. We'll chat about the outdoors all day, ask us questions, utilize it, and we'll figure it out for you, or help you figure it out.
Exciting times. Well, mate, thanks for coming down. Thanks for sharing some stories and talking about the outdoors. And it's really interesting to see your path, right? And to have, the educational side of things be such a focus for you guys. And then, how the store happens, like you've probably never even thought about it. And then someone suggests it.
Right.
It's amazing how, like, and that's why I do this podcast, is people won't know that story, right? Like, it's so cool to how you navigate and got to where you are. So I really appreciate you coming down and sharing that story. That's awesome. So for everyone listening, they can go to the website. So what's the website and what's the location?
thenativesummit.com. And we're downtown Edmond. So the old part of downtown.
Real downtown Edmond.
Yeah. So second and Broadway, we're 3 blocks north of that.
Oh, awesome. Well, again, thanks so much for coming down. And for everyone listening, I'll post the links and the address in the description down below, and you can go to that and go by yourself and go learn about the outdoors and go send us photos and tag us both in the trips that you've taken, because we want to see it. So thanks for listening. We'll catch you next episode. Cheers.
This podcast is presented by the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, telling Oklahoma's story through its people since 1927. For more information on the Hall of Fame, go to www.oklahomahof.com and follow them on Instagram for daily updates at OklahomaHOF. Also, huge shout out to RCB Bank for jumping on board to be a sponsor. RCB Bank's loan promotion is here. For a limited time, head into any of their 40 Oklahoma locations to get as low as 1.79 APR on your next car, boat, camper, or ATV. Apply online at rcbbank.com. RCB Bank, that's my bank. Rate and finance with approved credit. Restrictions apply. Member FDIC. Huge shout out to my sponsors. Thank you for listening. We'll catch you next episode. Cheers.
Thank you for listening. We are inspired by those around us and hope that you are too. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review so we can keep telling your stories. For more great Oklahoma content, follow This Is Oklahoma on Facebook and Instagram.